All right, so welcome to the Troubadour, another episode where we discover more about ourselves. In the end, it's like it is all about you. It's not about anyone else or anything else, so it's all you we're discovering, and whatever is helpful with that. Now, today I have a specific angle, like all the time, but this time too. And the angle is, in fact, sensitivity. Because, of course, with inspiration, with poetry, with making music, you got to be sensitive. You listen well, you're highly sensitive to every little change, every little thing. And this is what we see in our transformation too. It's like an increase of sensitivity to an overwhelming level, you could say, that smallest things can disrupt you and suddenly hit like a thunder. And so that's great, this sensitivity. Now, in the psychology, highly sensitivity is also one thing, and it's basically, it's being said like, okay, that can be a highly sensitivity in which you cannot operate like a normal human being would do, or this child is so sensitive it can hardly function in a normal setup, what people call normal. And you might recognize this sensitivity for yourself in general. Maybe you had it as a child too. But it's fun to look at it because it's also given to artists. The idea of characteristic of an artist is highly sensitivity, listening to music in a way that nobody listens, or seeing art and being so, say, triggered by the color, or triggered by who knows what, the rhythm, or it's literally like unlimited in which direction that can go. But you will recognize something of that in yourself for sure. But to help you recognize it, we will do an high sensitivity test. So we're preparing ourselves for that later. And so today we have some interesting ingredients, I can say. It's like this high sensitivity is being introduced first. Now, from a great book, by the way, it's like Wired to Create. It's really interesting. So I'll read something out of that. So another part is a totally hilarious teacher in music. Totally hilarious. They're actually two teachers. You will see them. They're so funny, and I had to share it, so that's what will come later too. And then there's the introduction. The meditation, basically. The meditation that we're going to do today is a musical one, and this is a beautiful performance with a viola da gamba, like an old violin, cello, and a lute. So we will listen to that. We start with that in a moment. So another part that comes in to bring it all together, because this is the umbrella, the literally umbrella without a real cover, but it's covering everything, and that's our urtext. In the urtext in chapter 2, I shared this before, but it's great to look at it again now in this perspective. That is like the opening of the spiritual eye comes with an increased sensitivity for everything. Like something is noticed, something is happening. You become highly sensitive for things that a normal, so-called normal human being would not even notice. But because something has shifted in you, now suddenly you start to see things in a whole different way. That's great, but it comes also with the highly sensitivity, with that you can be exhausted in, for instance, walking 5 minutes through a crowd. You could be completely exhausted, and you don't have to question yourself, but it's just part of the setup that you're in. Now, so this is why I use it too, because we know highly sensitivity, we know this as a characteristic of someone. And it's like if it stays within a setup of psychology, it would be like as if we say to each other, like, well, that's the way it is. Now, and I'm saying this is the new level on top of that, so to speak. The new level is then, no, highly sensitivity is a temporary stage in which you become sensitive and actually start to look at what is going on and experiencing really like pain or who knows what. Like you experience an intensity, however you want to characterize that. And there's a real function to that will help you to to step up, to lift up your consciousness. Now that's why I thought this is coming together really beautifully. And with the help of the Urtext, I will introduce that after the meditation that we're going to do. So the meditation is like this. It's like I play this video in which you see two people perform this song, and then we will be quiet for 5 minutes and then see what happens afterwards. Maybe I'll repeat it one more time or play something else, but at least you know what's going on. It did say it. The silence did say it. There was no what if. The silence did say it. We just didn't know that we were ready. I love this. So that was great, beautiful song. So thank you so much for joining with me in this. It's like it's so great to break in, or to be so sensitive for music or for words, for atmospheres, for like this. In the end, is everything is going to bring you home. So this increased sensitivity is just like the bridge to come to it. That's the beauty of, for me, it's the beauty of becoming open and sensitive. And yes, totally overwhelmed, and it's too much, and it's intense, and it's this and it's that. Yes, everything is going to take you home. So you hear one song, one word, one phrase is being shared, and it literally brings you home. That is so incredible. So this is the offering, of course, that in fact is given to us in every moment. Why wouldn't everything take you home if that's where you really abide, huh? So, and to see highly sensitivity as an abnormality would be, well, waste. It's like, no, highly sensitivity, that's the bridge. That is where it occurs. And this is, you don't have to deal with that. No, you have to slide right in to where it's actually bringing you. You should be highly sensitive. Like if you're not highly sensitive, then what are you feeling? You could say like you're dead. You're not feeling it. So here everything is with an increased sensitivity will be unbearable. So much easier for you to literally release and let go and disappear into the heart of God. That's the great thing about highly sensitivity. Now this is great. So if we're going, it takes the whole, the whole story in a different perspective. That's so lovely. So I love that. That's wonderful. Now we're going to listen to two who wrote a book. I'm actually reading it, but it's like two put their minds together and wrote a book called, this is not new, it's like 10 years old or something. It's like Wired to Create. I've used it before, but more in the background, you could say, as inspiration material. But now I had like, okay, I'm gonna read the part about highly sensitivity, because you'll see what happens. So I'm sharing that with you, just as part of the journey. Are you a highly sensitive person? As journalist Deborah Ward writes of her own creative process, Creativity is the pressure valve for all that accumulated emotional and sensory data. It opens the door and lets the energy flow out from me into my work like electricity from the Niagara Falls. And when I create, there is a peace and feeling of fulfillment that I can hardly describe. But that doesn't mean it's easy. So what exactly does it mean to be a highly sensitive person, and how do you know if you are one? In 1990s, Aaron became curious what it really means when people are colloquially described as sensitive. Along with her husband Arthur, also psychologists, she conducted interviews with people who self-identified as highly sensitive. The Aarons put up advertisements looking for people who were introverted or easily overwhelmed by things like noisy places or evocative and shocking entertainment, selecting an equal number of men and women across a variety range of ages and occupations. They then interviewed each person for 3 or 4 hours on a range of personal topics, from their childhood and personal history to current attitudes and life problems. Many respondents expressed a connection to the arts and nature, as well as an unusually sympathy for the helpless, animals, victims of injustice. Many also expressed their spirituality, seeing God in everything, going on long meditation retreats, and playing an important role in their life. The Aarons were surprised to see quite a few extroverts in their sample, considering that their advertisements specifically called for introverts. Based on these interviews, they created 60 items questionnaire that included items that went far beyond simply being overwhelmed by stimulation. The questions ranged from having a rich and complex inner life to intensely falling in love, to having vivid dreams, to being deeply moved by the arts and music, to being startled easily, to being heavily affected by changes in one's life, to being especially sensitive to pain, hunger and caffeine. The final version of their scale, known as the highly sensitive person, contains 27 items which were tested on a group of undergraduate students, psychology students, as well as on a random sample of participants. To the Aaron's surprise, considering the broad range of elements, all of the items tended to clump together. In other words, those who scored high on one item tended to score high on all other items, and those who scored low on one item tended to also score low on the others. It's also noteworthy that although the final's 27 item scale refers more frequently to negative emotions, the items on the larger and original scale that had to do with positive emotions, when are you feeling happy, is the feeling sometimes really strong, were still positively correlated with the negative effect items. This is in line with the idea that sensitivity is associated with a wider range of emotional processing, both positive and negative. Although the total score on the HSP scale was associated with neuroticism, being highly sensitive appeared to be a larger personality trait than neuroticism alone. Even after taking neuroticism and negative effect into their account, the scale still positively correlated with items such as feeling love intensely and sometimes experiencing intense feelings of happiness. And it's interesting to note, highly sensitive people were not all introverts. This makes sense considering that there are plenty of highly sensitive introverts and extroverts. Indeed, as the metal rock performers showed, the coexistence of introverted and extroverted characteristics is one of the central paradoxes of creative people. What's more, the highly sensitive person scale might be capturing different aspects of personality. For instance, one study found that the scale could be broken down into 3 basic factors: ease of excitement, low sensory threshold, and aesthetic sensitivity. Ease of excitement and low sensory threshold are associated with a tendency toward negative emotions and anxiety, while aesthetic sensitivity is positively correlated with well-being and openness to experience. Combining ease of excitement and low sensory threshold, Jonathan Creek and colleagues found 2 clear factors on the HSP scale: temperamental sensitivity and rich inner life. So if you're interested in getting a sense of where you stand on the 2 main factors, here they are. Okay, so here they are. So the next thing that we're going to do then is also to take a look at them and maybe get your little notebook out and do the test. That's fun. So temperamental sensitivity, ever heard of that? Introduction we just had. Now here, oh yeah, the test. So here are some questions. First, this is the first page. It's 10, 19, 24. There they are. So this is about rich inner life. The first 2 are about highly sensitivity, about temperamental sensitivity. So I can read it to you. You just give an answer to yourself. You don't even have to share it. It's highly personal, maybe. Are you bothered by intense stimuli like loud noises or chaotic scenes? And do you become unpleasantly aroused when a lot is going on around you? Are you made uncomfortable? Are you easily overwhelmed by things like bright lights, strong smells, coarse fabrics, or sirens close by? Are you easily overwhelmed by strong sensory input? Do you find it unpleasant to have a lot going on at once? Do you startle really easily? Do you get rattled when you have a lot to do in a short amount of time? Does your nervous system sometimes feel so frazzled that you just have to get off by yourself? Do changes in your life shake you up? Do you find yourself needing to withdraw during busy days into bed or into a darkened room or any space where you can have some privacy and relief from stimulation? Do you have made it a high priority to arrange your life to avoid upsetting and overwhelming situations? Are you annoyed when people try to get you to do too many things at once, like right now? When you must compete or be observed while performing a task, do you become so nervous or shaky that you do much worse than you would otherwise? Do you make a point to avoid violent movies and TV shows? Do other people's moods affect you? Are you particularly sensitive to the effect of caffeine? Does being very hungry create a strong reaction in you, disrupting your concentration or mood? Do you tend to be more sensitive to pain? Rich inner life, second part. Do you notice and enjoy delicate and fine scents, tastes, sounds, works of art? Are you deeply moved by the arts or music? Do you seem to be aware of subtleties in your environment? Do you have a rich, complex inner life? When people are uncomfortable in a physical environment, do you tend to know what needs to be done, to make it more comfortable, like changing the lighting or the seating? Okay, so if all your answers were yes, you're a highly sensitive person. Great. So you did it. You're announced a highly creative and sensitive person. Wonderful. So I thought this was fun because it's such a specific psychological test to do, but you might recognize all of it in you, or at least a lot. I do, and so that's great. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you, doesn't mean that you're neurotic, or it doesn't mean anything, in fact, because it's more like, oh, yeah, of course I'm highly sensitive. Yes, absolutely. Yes, of course I feel vibrations, and yes, of course I feel overwhelmed with a lot of noise and sound. And yes, I need to step back and have my quiet time in my room by myself, blinds closed, great. Yes, I need that time daily. And yeah, I'm not avoiding anything, but I'm also not really looking for it, for stimuli to overwhelm me. I don't look for that. So this is all, in fact, absolutely normal behavior and characteristics of somebody who's in a transition setup or in transformational process. So that's really great. And I want to hear some of you talk about this later. So I'm just continuing now and see how beautifully this all integrates. Now, because we did the test, we need some entertainment first before we continue. And the entertainment will be, it's kind of hilarious. It's, you know, we already talked about organum. You know, in the musical theory, there's such thing as organum, the first steps towards polyphony. Not monophony, like not one voice, but more voices. And these two guys that I invite here are sharing something about that. That's a beautiful example, but also hilarious. So that's why I love to share that with you. I'm gonna pull it up just for the entertainment of it all.
An actual practical example, I'm first going to sing the Ave Maria Stella again as the Vox Principalis. So we are going to assume that the Vox Principalis is singing it in this tonality. Ave Maria Stella. So now I've transposed it to a fourth. Now obviously you have to imagine you have two different people singing it, so you would have heard their voices overlaid. So now if we overlay their voices, we get this effect. Ave Maria Stella.
Okay, so that, I didn't want to miss that. It's great. Practical music theory, so that's what I loved about it. Okay, so hold on to this, or let it go. That's fine too. We'll continue with the next step. And that is, what about this highly sensitivity and transformational journey? And of course, yes, that is then the urtext that I'm going to bring in as some kind of Troubadour Course in Miracles. And I'm going to help you with that. Because you don't know what is behind all of this directly. Okay, so here, this is from the urtext. See, here's the thing that I was talking about: the sensitivity, the sensitivity, but also the development of vision. So how can you could say, like, how can you become sensitive for the voice for God? This is basically the question, like, how do you become sensitive? How can I hear the thunder of silence? In other words, like, how can I actually hear that? Well, I will have to say go through a process in which I allow myself to become so sensitive for inner something inner in me that is speaking to me, literally opening up all the registers to, in fact, receive that as a telescope, almost like as a telescope receiving signals from space. No, that would be a comparison. So you can see, like, well, if there are clouds, it is in no way going to receive those messages. It's covered. It is covered in clouds, and yeah, that's gonna say put a signal in all directions, but not in the direction of the telescope. It will not be strong enough. When the sky is open and clear, when the mind is open and clear, and there's no clouds of thoughts, you become totally receptive to have a high resolution of sound to receive that and actually be able to catch that frequency. Of course, this is all happening in you, but still it's nice to look at it that way. Now, in fact, that is being said here, but in different words. But the outcome is as certain as God. The spiritual eye literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. All the solutions which the physical eye seek dissolve in its sight. All the solutions which the physical eyes seek dissolve in its sight. The spiritual eye, which looks within, recognizes immediately that the altar has been defiled and needs to be repaired and protected. Perfectly aware of the right defense, it passes over all others, looking past error to truth. Because of the real strength of its vision, it pulls the will into its own service and forces the mind to concur. This reestablishes the true power of the will and makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay. The mind then realizes with increasing certitude that delay is only a way of increasing unnecessary pain, which it need not tolerate at all. The pain threshold drops accordingly, and the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. Now that isn't so. So like now it changed into not minor intrusions of discomfort, but total intrusions of discomfort. The children of God are entitled to perfect comfort, which comes from a sense of perfect trust. Until they achieve this, they waste themselves and their true creative power on useless attempts to make themselves more comfortable by inappropriate means. But the real means is already provided and does not involve any efforts on their part at all. Their egocentricity usually misperceives this as personally insulting, an interpretation which obviously arises from their misperception of themselves. Egocentricity and communion cannot coexist. Even the terms themselves are contradictory. Okay, so that was the one I actually should have read first. The misuse of will, of God's will, misuse is then thinking you have a will of your own, can do the way that you want to do things. So the misuse of will engenders a situation which, in the extreme, becomes altogether intolerable. Pain thresholds can be high, but they are not limitless. Eventually, everybody begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As this recognition is more firmly established, it becomes a perceptual turning point. This ultimately reawakens the spiritual eye, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. The alternating investment in two types or levels of perception is usually experienced as conflict for a long time and can become very acute. Now this is why I brought this all in. It's like this acuteness of the sensatory experience of yourself, like things become intolerable, it drives you crazy, you completely get nuts by experiencing what you experience, and you know it's not peace and it's not love, and you want to throw the books out because it doesn't seem to work, and it's like there's a big conflict going on. Now you can say, like, well, what is the real stimulus here? From outside, it doesn't really depend on that. But you become also highly sensitive for anything that happens outside of you because you're under like a tremendous amount of stress, in fact. Because you think you have to hold it together. You think that you have to, do something with the world. And you have to somehow receive in silence the word of God. Now that's a tremendous conflict. If it isn't resolved, it builds up and it builds up to the level of intolerableness. So that's not that you become nuts or that you think like, I don't know what's going on, but man, stay out of my way. Like this. So this is really interesting to see in your transformational process. It's actually very positive that's occurring and doesn't need to last long, even though you will stretch it to the end until you certainly know that it's worth giving this incredible conflict up in order to experience peace and have a beautiful experience of your connectedness. Yeah, that's insane, I know, but it's like, yeah, this is mostly what happens. For many of us, it happens like that. You stretch your conflict as long as you can, and then suddenly it's too much and it breaks, and there it is. It's whatever helps with that would be a total speed up. So, okay, you need first a heart attack. Okay, then you need first a heart attack. You need first this, you need first that. Yes, okay. So it's all to make the situation literally impossible for you. If you didn't get it yet, it will look like this, or you will find something to use against yourself to increase the conflict, in fact. Of course, this is paradoxical, the way that I'm teaching this, but it really comes down to it. So the highly sensitiveness is also like an essential part in that. It is not so much that there's something wrong with you. No, you're in the right place. You will have allowed this to become an issue. Now you don't want to solve this yourself. So this is also where you need like guidance. Otherwise you think you need to adjust this into your own ways of problem solving that you don't believe in yourself and never has worked. So there's another way. You invite spirit in to help you out of this. This is the only thing that you in fact need to do. Ask for help. No, you don't have to get adjusted to the world and tolerate all the all the overwhelming noises and smells and all this in order to become a better human being. That is not what is asked of you. But many are still thinking that way, and that's not necessary. So here is that resolved, in fact, in this what I just shared. Even though you might not get it right away, but it is like, no, it's pointing in the right direction. It's like your spiritual eye is opening at last. How do you think the universe is? See, the interesting part of looking at your own characteristics would be to look at it from a human perspective. Then everything is abnormal in a certain sense, or tolerable, because within the scope of a human behavior or human sensitivity, that is accepted and it's workable. You can still function. Yes, you sleep, you eat, you do all the things that you need to do, so you're okay. Like, no, that's not the story. That was the human story. Now we look at it from a transformational view and see that this highly sensitivity, this impossibleness of this world, actually is like the main ingredient for a good spiritual meal. And yeah, so that needs to be digested, you could say. That needs to be eaten and digested. And that's what is occurring. Well, there's a lot of metaphors too that I brought in, but one of them, like the telescope, is really great. If it's cloudy, however are you going to get signals from within there coming to you? That would be impossible. So any consideration or any conflict of will, any disturbance that you allow in your experience of peace would immediately block sight to you. And you know this now, so you become really sensitive for it when it happens, and you don't know how to get rid of it, but like you have to do something with it. You can't deny it either. So that is really what the speed up is. So the moments, this is maybe a great way to say it, it's like the moments that you feel this intensity and the impossibleness of it, and the overwhelmingness of it, doesn't take that long anymore for you to ask for help. Before, in your old days, as in who knows what, you could tolerate this and stretch this for years. And now it's like 2 milliseconds is already enough to be totally overwhelmed, or maybe 2 minutes or 2 hours is already enough to be so overwhelmed that you will ask for help. Great progress. See what you did. You literally collapsed time from 2 years to 2 hours or 2 minutes or 2 seconds, where you continuously can ask for help and receive that what you need in this moment to be able to, in fact, line up and link with the communication that's going on, which is your natural inheritance. It is not anything else. Now that's great progress. And so you see, we use music for that. Like, you will become so sensitive that literally everything can bring you home, because everything is reminding you of home. You see the beauty, you hear the beauty of the music, you see the beauty of the painting or whatever. You see the pattern, something you discover with your new mind, and literally you say are overwhelmed with gratitude for the fact that your eyes are opening at last. Now this is what is being shared here.